Hello and welcome to Collective Effervescence, the mental health podcast. I'm your host, Carlos, aka Los, and with me, as always,
Luis, what's up?
hello, man, Luis. We just released our first episode this past Wednesday, and I mean, what a response and like feedback that we got out of it. I mean, we could already see the community growing, and I think just the response that we got was, for at least for me, amazing. Dude, I'm so happy.
Yeah, for real. I mean, we have like 25, 26 followers right now on Instagram, which I was like, what? That was crazy. We have some people downloading it. We have I've gotten a lot of feedback from friends, family, constructive feedback too. People just telling me what they liked, what we could have possibly changed a little bit. But I'm super excited. I'm proud that we were able to let out that first episode. We came in, recorded it, we did it, and we got some good responses. So I'm excited to see how much further we're going to be able to take this.
Yeah, definitely. Same here. And I think this really dives into our first topic of the episode here. It's just gratitude and just being grateful. You know, this is something that we've been wanting to do for a while. And I think in life, or, you know, whatever you may have going on, the stresses can build up sometimes. And if you take a moment sometimes to just stop and reflect on where you are, just be present for a moment. You know, whatever it is that you have going on, whatever you're stressed out about, just be present and just, you know, think about things that you can be grateful for. And I think for us, at least for me, you know, 100%, it's like I've been wanting to do this for almost maybe a little bit over a year, maybe a year and a half now. So to be here, to have released the first podcast episode, to have gotten such great feedback and you know, constructive feedback and things that we could do differently, and we see the community growing already. I think that's huge, and I'm beyond grateful for that. You know.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, for me, I used to in regards to doing a podcast, like never in my wildest dreams did I think I was going to be doing a podcast. This is crazy, but it's just like it's so cool because it's just like how fast the turnaround time was for us to get this started. It was like we talked about it a little bit. Like, first of all, I mean, TBH, I was like, I don't even know this guy, but it's just like, he's cool. We work together, but it's just like, you know, we're vibing, you know,
Yeah.
and we barely even talked about the podcast. And as we started to get into it, I was like, oh man, like, it's cool. This could be something. And then I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to just buy the stuff I need. So we bought like mics, fucking microphone stands, lights and shit. So I was like, I have this laptop. I don't have a need for it. Now I do make a podcast.
There we go.
And it's just like, I'm just so grateful for the fact that, like, one, I had the ability to be able to do this. Two, I found someone else that wants to do this too, and we're kind of on the same page about it. And then it's just like, you know, now we're here, we're doing the damn thing. Like, it was our episode 2, hopefully release it, you know, at the same time as the last one, and then kind of come up with a consistent schedule of when we're gonna be releasing, recording, all that stuff. So it's been a fun ride so far, and I'm excited to see what's next.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, I think just kind of going a little bit more about, you know, our journey and, you know, how we want to kind of talk about gratitude. It's just like, life kind of moves on fast. You know, we talked about, I mean, we started working together April of this year. I think we maybe bought the podcast equipment in September.
Yeah.
And so it's the middle of November, and we barely kind of got that. And so, like, when you look at things like the bigger picture of things, it's sometimes you can get like, oh, why did it take so long? Or, you know, why am I not this many episodes in it? But it's just like, no, you need to just take a moment to just be appreciative of, like, hey, I actually started this. Like, I'm actually doing it. I've been wanting to do this for a while. And so just to be able to reflect and establish that sense of gratitude, I mean, it's a really important thing, especially when it comes to mental health, you know, especially, and I'll talk a little bit about, you know, when I really started to be active in practicing my gratitude. You know, it was really over the pandemic. You know, I think the life situation that I was in and the place where I was living at the time wasn't where I wanted to be. You know, there's different things that I wanted to do with my life at the time. And, I let the negativity of the situation kind of get to me and really take control of my mental health. But, you know, as I started to reflect more on my own mental health and my own journey and life and what I wanted out of it, I, started to learn more about the effects of being just gracious for what you have. I would go on walks around my neighborhood and be like, hey, this is not that bad of a neighborhood. Like, this is a beautiful neighborhood I'm in. And, I think just that, like, just walking outside and taking a big, deep breath of fresh air. And it's just like, this place isn't that bad after all. And it's just crazy. Like, just that little mindset, that little switch that you do to, like, really reflect on where you are in that moment and being present, it can do a lot for your mental health.
Yeah, I think when it comes to gratitude, I think for me personally, it's something I need to work on, because I can be a negative Nancy a lot. And I'm just like, man, work is this, outside of work, this, I'm out of shape, this, whatever. But it's just like, no, like, I get to go to work every day and make money, and that money led to this podcast. I mean, So it's just like, just saying that right now, I'm like, damn, like, that really puts things into perspective. And it's just like, I am grateful for, for being where I am. Like, honestly, I'm from Northern California, or originally, and then now I'm in Southern California. It's just like, yeah, it wasn't my choice to live here. And at first I was like, man, I hate it here. I hate it here. Like, it's smoggy. I can't see the stars. I miss my mom. And it's just like, it's crazy, because now that I'm here, like, okay, yeah, this is where I live now. Maybe next year or the year after, I'll be able to move where I want to, which I don't know where that is yet. But it's just like, same thing. I took a walk. Like, I went to go buy tires for my car, like last month. Expensive. But, I bought tires for my car. I was like, man, it's a lot of money. But I was like, dude, I didn't have to ask my dad for money for this. Like, I had the money to buy the tires. And then even when I was there, I walked around that neighborhood, and I was like, it was just like, it was middle of October. So it was like, everyone had their Halloween decorations up. And I was like, man, these people are really into the spirit. Like, they had like, big spiders and spider webs and all this stuff. Like, man, this is cool. It's just walking around. Like, I went there with my slippies, and I was like, all right, well, I don't have any walking shoes, but I remember I had my hiking shoes in the trunk. Like, oh, cool, I'll just put these on, just walk around, whatever. So I'm just walking around, and it's just like, man, what a nice day this is. Yeah. Like, the sun was out, it wasn't hot, it wasn't cold, it's kind of just like perfect day. And reflecting on that now, I'm like, dude, like, I was able to, pay for my tires. My car is not going to slip off the side of the road now, because I have tires on it, like good tires. And it's just like, I was able to pay for that. Like, I had the money for it, and I worked for that too. Yeah. At this job at the time, I'm like, man, I don't like my job. But now I'm just like, it's not exactly where I want to be, but I still get to have the aspect of connecting with people every day. Yeah. Talking with my coworkers, going out into the field, doing different things I've never done before. And it's like, it's outside of my comfort zone for sure. But I'm just so grateful that I have the opportunity to go outside my comfort zone and take this to, the next level, whether it's, still working for the rest of my life or podcasting the rest of my life. But it's just like, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to do both right now. And it's just like, a lot of people can't say the same thing,
No, and I think really what it comes down to is that mental switch. It's the I have to versus the I get to or I'm able to. Right. And once you start making that mental switch, it's really like, wow, life isn't that bad. Right. Like, my situation isn't that bad. And I think with our current job, and of course we always find a way to talk about work. Of course. But with our current job right now, I think we kind of expressed this a couple of times, that we've been unhappy with it, or there are just things about it that we would maybe like different, or maybe I'm gonna go work somewhere else. I don't want to work here anymore. I don't want to do this job anymore. But it's and I actually had this conversation with someone really early on, when I was like, I took this job because it was gonna get me out of Northern California. It was gonna bring me back home. I'd be making more than I was on my current job. I could save up and put myself in a better financial situation. And so when I actually got into the job and realized, okay, maybe this isn't for me, and I'm having my own struggles with it, I really lost sight of the fact that this job served a purpose for me. And that purpose was get you back home where all your friends and family are located. You can save up a little bit more money. You can do certain things. And because of that job, I was able to start this podcast because of the job. We're now friends, and it could be hard to reflect on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, how do you suggest, for someone that might be in a situation where it's hard to think of, this life is terrible right now. I'm going through this and that. How could I possibly be grateful for anything like that? It's
how to reflect.
Yeah. How do you? I mean, from your own experiences, what are some things that you may have done?
For me, I think a lot of it was journaling. Wrote everything down. Just even now, I don't do it as often as I would like to, but I think you kind of first start there. You write down, this is what I have. I have, a roof over my head. I have, food on the table, clothes on my back. Those are like, you're in a safe spot. Wherever you are. I mean, so it's just like, as long as you have those three things, you're probably in a good spot to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's just like, so you think about that, and then you start to think about, okay, I have food, clothes, money, whatever. And then I think you kind of look back on like, okay, where was I last year? And so for me, last year I was, we're November now. Last year I was, I was working, I was selling cars, and didn't like that job. But like the crazy thing was I was scared. I was out in the public. I had to wear a mask. I wasn't vaccinated. The vaccine wasn't even a thing yet.
Yeah.
And, we'd have to socially distance, and test drives it was just the whole way that we went about work was totally different. And I was like, man, like at any moment I could get COVID because people are just coming into our building. You don't know where they've been before. And it's just like, even my coworkers, I don't know what they do outside of work or who they're around. So it's just like at any moment we could be shut down because of COVID or whatever. So, but now, this year, have a new job, have my own place. And it's just like, I have more space to myself, and it's just like, yeah, cool. Now I could be grateful for, this is what I do have. I have, I found stuff around, like I found a table and some other stuff, and the trash, whatever, cleaned it up, brought it in. Like, now it's mine. Like, it was someone else's garbage. Now it's mine. Like, one man's what was it?
One man's garbage is another man's treasure.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly.
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah, so I was like, literally, that's what this place was. I found the table in the dumpster, and I was like, bet, I have a new table now. I'm going to wipe this shit down, and it's mine. Yeah. And it's just like, just realizing where you are. And then another thing, too, is, okay, where do I want to be? And what am I doing now to get there? So that's another thing to be grateful for. It's like you have the opportunity. Well, I have the opportunity to be like, okay, like next year, I'm not 100% sure where I want to be, but it's just like, I have the opportunity to be able to sit back. Okay, now I'm making more money now. I'm in my own space. Now I can really figure things out. Like, do I want to move somewhere else? Do I want to find a different job? Whatever it is that I want to do, I have the opportunity now to sit back and think and reflect and be like, okay, this is what I have now. This is what I want. What am I doing now to kind of get there? So it's just like, be grateful for the opportunity to be able to do that, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people are working jobs that they're not being paid enough. They're not getting enough hours, whatever it is. And it's just like, you have to be grateful for where you are, for what you have, and then you can kind of go from there. What do I want next, or whatever? So that's kind of where I would start. Would be journaling, see where you are now. Well, what do you have? What's working for you? And be grateful for those things.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of, what you were saying there reminded me of a little quote that I wrote for myself. It's, acknowledge how far you've come, but hold yourself accountable for how far you can actually go. And I think it's, be present and just reflect. And it doesn't have to be this whole like magical thing, or, my life is this beautiful, journey. And you don't always have to come to that moment, but it's, learn to appreciate the little things and be present with where you are in life. And there is another quote that is coming to my mind right now that I heard from somebody. It's, never wish away a moment. It's like, oh, I wish I was here already, or I wish I was doing that, or I wish I was, somewhere else in life. And it was just kind of like, life is not too short. You're just wasting it. And I think the more present you are in your life, the more time you have and the more things that you could find to be grateful about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think as you begin to reflect, you realize how much time you still have to do the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
So like for me, I'm just like, I have to work and whatever, this and that. But it's like, but now it's like, yeah, I get to work, and I also get to have time, thanks to my baby mom and stuff that takes the kids and stuff. But I have time to build on the podcast and work on this. And this is like, it's becoming a passion project for me now, because at first I was like, oh, this is a cool idea, whatever. But now we're actually doing it. Like, dude, like this could actually be something like for real. And it's just like, I'm just so happy and great. And this whole week, it's just been just so exciting. And I'm just so happy and grateful for, first of all, just seeing how many responses we got for the first episode. Yeah. And just like excited for all the ideas that we have coming out for more episodes. And it's just like, the more we get, we're at 25 followers now. And it's like, we might be at 100 soon. Yeah. And then, it's going to grow from there. So I was like, dude, this is exciting. And so it's just like, now is a time for me to be able to sit back and be like, cool. Like, yes, I get to go to work every day. Yeah. I get to even, like while we're at work, I'm just like, I'm grateful to be here because my job is to find people jobs, and so I'm able to do that. And it's just like, there's, a lot of times you have more to be grateful for than you think. Yeah. Life gets hard, and, kids, whatever drama, whatever you have, life gets hard. Life's a hard thing. It's not easy. And so it's just like, but you can make it a little bit easier if you stop and think about, like, this is what I have, and I'm happy for it. I'm grateful for it. It's like, thank you to you believe in God, universe, whatever it is. Thank you, and it's just like, and just be grateful and have that gratitude, because once you realize, like, tomorrow is not promised, but it's just like, but hey, if I wake up tomorrow, this is what I'm going to do, because I have the ability to do those things. So it's just like, if you're struggling with anything, like for me personally, losing weight, getting in the gym, like I have the opportunity to change that around, and I should be grateful for that. So I'm kind of getting back into that mindset of, getting back into, eating better, going to the gym, whatever, walking more, so it's just like, I think, once you realize that you do have a lot going for you, life just gets a little bit better, a little bit easier. And then it's just, if you have a bad day, you decide to turn around, like, cool, well, I woke up this morning, I was able to get to work. Maybe work didn't go the way you thought it was going to go, or the way you wanted it to go, but, you still got paid for that day. I mean, so it's just like,
you always got to, and it's as cheesy as it say, it's, well, every dark cloud has its silver lining, or you got to find the good in a situation. It's like, well, yeah, you truly have to. And this kind of goes back to the first episode, and what we were talking about there is the amount of negativity that is, in our lives and in our world. It's, there's always something new that's happening, right? So when you're, so caught up in the storm of negativity, it's like, well, it's like not necessarily everything is like that. I mean, even myself, like, some storms could be pretty bad, right? Yeah. But I love the sound of the rain. I love the fresh air it brings after, right? And so you have to be able to train your mind to be like, okay, what can I really take from this situation? And I think everything that you go through in life, it's an opportunity for you to learn from or to grow from. You don't just go through things for no reason. Like, no, at least for me, I always want to get better and be a better version of myself. So anytime I kind of go through a bump in the road, I always have to pull myself back and be like, okay, let's analyze the situation. Obviously, don't overanalyze it and start overthinking it. But it's, okay, why did I go through this? And what can I take away from it? And I think that the more people that actively engage in that and actively say, okay, I'm going through this in life right now, but what can I do to either get out of this situation or what can I take away from this situation?
Yeah, and it's not an overnight thing. It's
No.
not something that, you know, ooh, tomorrow I'm gonna have a better mindset. You can think that. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great to have that mindset, and it's great to have that you know, that process. But it's just like, but then you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So tomorrow, oh man, like shit just got worse. But it's just like, but as long as you're able to take a hard situation or whatever, as long as you're able to take that and find something to learn from it, or some kind of positive takeaway from it, because everything, breakups or loss of a friendship or whatever, something comes out of that eventually. So it's just like, and there are times where you just have to live in the negative space, because that's that is another process of like of getting into the right mindset. You kind of have to sit there and be like, all right, well, this happened, but then also have the the foresight to be like, okay, this happened, what am I going to learn from this, or what am I learning from this, or what have I learned from this? And then it's like, okay, cool, I'm grateful that this happened. Like, I'm glad this happened, because now I have, when I come into this situation again, I already know what I'm supposed to do. So, every like, not most bad things that happen or negative situations, you're going to come out with some kind of insight, with some kind of knowledge of like, okay, this happens again, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, because that's just what life is. It's about, it's lessons every day. I mean, you're going to learn something every day, go through something every day. So it's just like, as long as you're able to, one, appreciate that, and two, like, this is a journey. This is not like, all right, tomorrow I'm not going to be depressed anymore. But it's just like, if you're on medication, whatever, keep taking it, whatever you need to do. But it's just like, as long as you have that gratitude of like, okay, I have the opportunity to learn from this and get better, and adjust, because that's another thing. You gotta adjust. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over.
It's your GPA. Yes, that's the saying that I had in college. Great players adjust. That's your GPA right there. You got to get that up. But yeah, and I think we should also acknowledge that, like you were saying, sometimes we have to live in the negativity. Like, embrace it too. Embrace the negative, but also learn to control the amount that you take in. I think the universe is perfectly balanced, and you have to have the dark with the light, the negativity and the positivity, and I think our job in life, it's finding that perfect balance of like living in between them, and then, learning how to go about life. But I mean, the more negativity you experience, so it's like, okay, well, like you said, I know how to maneuver through this. I know how to grow from it. I know how to handle it the next time. Okay, that gives you the opportunity to kind of move into that positive realm a little bit more, Yeah. And so I think it's just embrace life. I think the message, at least that I want to get across with like being, grateful in your life, is just embrace it. Embrace everything that you are going through. Embrace who you are in that moment, because you're not going to be that person forever. And as much as we think life is short, it's also really long. Like, for me, I've gone through some pretty dark times, and I was just like, the whole woe is me, my life is over, this is it, like, I can't do this anymore. And when I look at the big picture of things, I'm 20, going to be 25 now. If I live to be 100, I'm only a quarter of my life. Like, I've only lived a quarter of my life. I've experienced a lot in that time, but there's still so much more life to live. And am I the same person I was in high school? No, but I was going through it in high school.
Right.
Am I the same person I was in college? No, I'm completely different. And so I've consistently have grown and have given myself the opportunity to grow. But, I think when we do take a step back, reflect, and really, look at our lives, it's in some sense, life is short, but I mean, there's still so much life to live and so much life to experience. And I think that for me, it's like, well, right now I have the opportunity to live all of that. I have the opportunity to experience all that I'm going to experience.
Right.
And I'm grateful for that, you know?
Yeah, because I think if you sit back and reflect and you're just like, okay, this is like I'm 31, so it's just like if you look back and reflect on what's already happened in your life, like, you know, for me, high school wasn't the best. I mean, so it's just like, you know, there's high school and then there's college and then I met my girlfriend then and then, you know, we're not together anymore and then we have our kids together, so it's just like, you know, it's hard to be able to see the positive all the time. But I think, like, if I had the chance to go back and change anything, would I? No. I mean, because once you start getting into that, you start getting to that shoulda, coulda, woulda kind of thing. So once you get stuck in that, it's really hard to get back into the present. So I think, you know, whatever you've gone through, I mean, even right now, you can do it with me. Like, whatever you've gone through, what have you learned from all that? Write it down, journal it, and go back and look at it. And then I can almost guarantee by the time you're done writing, you're just like, dang, I've been through a lot, and yet I am still here. I mean, so it's just like, yeah, you think that, you know, this is over because, you know, you broke up with so and so, they broke up with you, whatever. But it's just like, after you look back and reflect, I'm like, man, like this happened. But yeah, look, here I am, still here, still kicking. Like, you know, there's still a lot that you can do. All you have to do is change your mindset a little bit. But I have the opportunity to be able to turn these things around. And I know I can because you probably already had done so before. I mean, so it's just like, you know, that's kind of my take on that.
And I think too, it's you're not always going to see the light at the end of the tunnel right away, see the positive in the situation, or see something that you can really take away from any given situation that you may be experiencing. It's not enough to just like only look for the positive in something, because sometimes there isn't. In that moment, you can't comprehend it, you don't see it, you don't understand it. So acknowledge the negativity, acknowledge your current situation, because that in itself is a lot of like, hey, I'm going through this right now. It's hard. I'm struggling. You know, maybe I need some help or whatever. But if you don't acknowledge it, it's only gonna, you know, get bigger and bigger, and it just be this thing that's haunting you in the back. And so, you know, you have to give, you know, whatever you're going through, just acknowledge it. Acknowledge your current situation, acknowledge where you are, and then, you know, kind of place some action behind it. It's like, this is where I'm at in life, and, you know, this is where I want to be.
Yeah, I think a lot of that too is you learn a lot about yourself. So you kind of get to this point of like, okay, like this happened, you know, and you can sit in it, and it's okay to sit in it, because no one should expect, you know, for you to go through like a traumatizing event, no matter what it was, you know, or just anything negative. No one should expect you to turn around the next day and be like, oh, I'm fine, I'm great. That happened, I'm great now. Because I think a lot of that in our society, I think a lot of that is expected. I think a lot of that is just like, oh, just suck it up and get over it and it'll be fine. And it's just like, no, don't do that, because if you don't sit in it, and if you don't sit in the dark, and you don't sit in your, you know, in what just happened and reflect on it, like, you're not going to be able to learn from it. So it's just like, all it's going to be, just like you said, it's going to keep growing and growing and growing until a point to where, you know, if you're in a relationship or you're talking to a friend or whatever, and you're going to get triggered, and you're just going to snap, and it's just going to be just a shit show. I mean, so it's just like, as long as you're able to acknowledge, like, hey, when these kinds of situations happen, I tend to do this. So as you learn more about yourself, you kind of like, you know, as you go through life, you're like, oh wait, I've done this before. I've been through this situation before. I handle it this way. This is how it worked out. If it didn't work out great, now you have the opportunity to be like, okay, cool. Now I could kind of do things differently. And then, you know, it's all going to be a learning thing too. So it's just like, you know, maybe next year I'll learn that this was the wrong way too, or whatever. So it's just like, you have the opportunity to be able to try something different.
And I think too, it's you know what you kind of said there. It's identify your triggers. Like you have to, because I mean, I think just at work I was triggered. I don't remember what it was. I think I was told to do something in a certain way, and that just like set me off. And maybe it comes from a lack of, control that I've had previously in my life, or not liking being told what to do when I'm already doing something or whatever. And so that is something that I have to heal from. And that was something that came unexpectedly my way. It was like, oh, this thing, I'm like, after this was told to me, I kind of got upset. And it was like, okay, well, why? Why am I feeling that way? Why did I get triggered by being told what to do? And I'm not the type of person who's like, no, don't tell me what to do. Like, I'm my own person. Right. I'm definitely not that type of person. And, I can be an employee. I can be a son or, a grandchild or whatever, and have other individuals that are, above me tell me what to do perfectly fine. But I was just in that situation. I thought that was weird for me, of like, I didn't like that. And that like kind of set me off. And like I said, maybe it was just the way that I was told to do something that really affected me in that way. But it was kind of something that I was like, wow, this triggers me. And I never knew it before, or never really paid attention to it. And so like I would get upset before. And so being able to reflect in that moment of like, okay, this triggered me. Why? Let's try to figure it out. If you don't know it now, that's fine. But hey, let's take a break. You're okay. You're fine. And let's, kind of get back to work or get back to the task at hand. But that for me was like, no, it's so important to know your triggers.
Yeah. I mean, there was just a situation for me at work actually too. Like I think a few months ago.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody on the phone, and he was like, called me a fool. And I was like, ooh. As soon as I heard that, like, I just saw red. I was like super upset, and I was like, look, guy. And I just started going back at him, and it was just, just going back and forth with him. So luckily my manager was there. I was like, hey bro, like, put him on hold. So I put him on hold, and he was like, you need to take a deep breath. Like, you're triggered right now. And I was just like, nah, fuck that guy. And then he's like, no. You're triggered. Take a deep breath. So I did. I was like, okay, what's up? What should I say? So what happened? I mean, I don't like being talked down to. I don't think a lot of people do.
No.
But it's just like, afterwards I was like, I took a few deep breaths, got back to him. I was able to help him out. And I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. He's like, all right, cool. Thanks, man. I was just like, But at the same time, I was just like,
all of a sudden.
Yeah. But at the same time, I was like, wow, like that was triggering for me. Like, I don't like that. And it's just like, and who likes being talked down to? I mean, so it's just like, I'm luckily my manager was there to be able to talk me through it and kind of calm me down. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm glad I'm in the office today. If I was at home, this could have ended a totally different way.
Yeah.
And then, but it's just like, that was a thing for me. And I was like, I don't like that at all. Like,
But I think too, something that we need to acknowledge from that was like, okay, we had somebody step in that was like aware, like, hey, he's triggered right now. I need to help him to kind of like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's relax, take a deep breath, do whatever you need to do. So then like you can kind of move forward in a better spot. And so it was just the right place at the right time. And then having somebody, because not everybody's like that. There's some people who be like, oh, he said what? Yeah, get him, whatever. And so having someone that's like, like, let's relax, let's take a step back, let's figure this out, and then, figure out how we can move forward. I think just having that, well, I mean, we need more people like that,
No, for real. I mean, like, to me, that was a big thing. I was like, wow, I'm so glad this guy's here right now.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, and then at the same time, it's just like, okay, so now that you have a trigger of whatever. Now you kind of have to be your own guy to step in and be like, hey, whoa, you're triggered.
Yeah.
You need to take a deep breath and relax. And it's easier said than done, especially when you're in the moment. Like for me, I would not have been able to do that if he wasn't there. I mean, so it's just like you kind of, and I've learned from that. I'm like, okay, like, in this situation specifically, if this guy was concerned about his money, so like, of course he's gonna get defensive and do whatever he thinks he needs to do to solve the issue.
Yeah.
It's never talking down to somebody, but
No.
but it's just like, he's just doing what he thinks is right. Mm-hmm. So it's just like going back into, okay, like going into his head, it's okay. Hopefully, I mean, I doubt it. Well, hopefully he's like, nah, it probably wasn't very nice or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, for me, it's just like, okay, this happened. This triggered me. I got help while I was there, but it's just like, so next time this happens, it's like, depending on the situation, sometimes the other person's a human too, and they're just doing what they think is best. So it's just like, you can't blame them, for stuff like that.
And I think that's a really big thing too. It's we hold ourselves and other people to such a high standard, or we think people at times are maybe a lot better than they really are. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to realize, hey, we're not perfect. People are going to mess up. We're all human. We all have our moments. And so just even you being able to come to that conclusion of like, maybe not the best, but that's just kind of what he did in that moment. And now I'm learning from it. Hopefully he can learn from it too. And we need to acknowledge, those moments that we're all human. We slip up, we make mistakes, we lash out sometimes and let our emotions get the best of us at times. And so I think the more you're able to acknowledge that for yourself and then translate it to acknowledge it for other people, like, hey, you know what? Maybe they're just kind of having a bad day today. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you say don't, let your emotions get the best of you, but how many of us can we actually say, no, my emotions are in check. I never lash out. I never, get upset or do all these other things. It's like, I mean, you don't know what that person might be going through, and especially when it comes to money, like,
right.
Better have my money. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So it's just kind of being able to analyze that situation and really kind of take a step back and be like, you know what? This is a situation that happened, and we're kind of better. We're okay right now, and I'm learning something from this.
Right. And I think that's kind of the main point that we're trying to make. Is like if you can sit back for a little bit and reflect, mm-hmm. and have that gratitude and be gracious or gratuitous, whatever. Have gratitude for stuff like that happens. You're able to sit back and reflect and learn. Like, okay, like, maybe that situation does not uncover a trigger, but you're gonna learn something from it. So it's just like, just take a step back, mm-hmm. reflect on it, and just be okay. Like, I'm grateful that I didn't act this way, because that could have been a whole other thing, and I could have lost my job probably. Depending on when, so you never know. So it's just like, if you have the opportunity and the ability to sit back, reflect on it, be understanding, and give yourself that grace and be grateful for, the things that are going for you or whatever, I think that just makes things just a little bit different, a little bit easier. Life's a little more palatable. I mean, mm-hmm. So it's just like, you just have to have that gratitude, and like I said earlier, it's not something that's going to happen next day. Yeah. So it's something you're going to have to actively work on. And that's something for me to have to actively work on, and look at the bright side, and look at the things I have and what I'm grateful for. And it's just like, the more I do that, I think the easier life is going to get.
I think it's important to be grateful for what you have going on, and just to really, take life for what it is, take, every moment for what it is, and just be appreciative of it, but, also, learn from it, grow from it. And ultimately this really comes down to, healthy coping mechanisms, or healthy, mental health, positive habits that you can develop for yourself to better handle situations going forward. So, I mean, if any of you guys have, certain techniques that you use on a daily basis, or in your life that, you're going through a moment and you realize, hey, when I do this helps me deal with that, share. Like, let us know so we can, let other people know about it too. And that's kind of, we don't want to just be talking about you, but, talking at you or talking to you the entire time. We want to build a community here and learn from you guys, and then, take that information and then share it. So if you guys have any practices or anything that you guys do for your own mental health that kind of help you on a day-to-day basis, let us know. We definitely want to, take whatever opportunity that we can to learn from you guys and really just continue to grow ourselves, but also, just build this community and share with one another. And I mean, you could have all this information for yourself. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast is I've learned so much throughout my own experiences. And I feel like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't share that information, share my experiences, and share some of the things that I learned along the way with other people,
For sure. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of the whole community is like everyone shares. And I think the more you share and the more you're vulnerable, I think the more you could also learn. From your past or whatever. So I think that it's kind of a good segue into our next topic about mental health and being in relationships, whether it's friendships or with your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. I think it's really important to know your other person, your partners. I mean, I'll talk about relationships specifically. You need to know your partners, like their triggers, their past, their traumas, everything. I mean, you really need to learn and understand that from that person. And at the same time, they need to understand you and your past and your trauma. And it needs to be there needs to be an open dialogue about that. And I think with our society, it's not really, it's not really talked about a lot. I think a lot of it, if you're in a relationship and somebody does something that you don't like, or I think our society just says, well, that's just how they are. Love them for who they are. But it's okay. That's cool. But it's just like, I can't love this person for who they are because the way that they act or whatever could be traumatizing or damaging to me. So it's like, you kind of have to learn, like, what your mental health is and your triggers and everything. But if you're with someone that doesn't kind of fit that mold and doesn't fit, does not fit, how you want to be talked to or treated or whatever, you have to make a decision and be like, you know what, this isn't the person for me. And unfortunately, that's kind of what happened with me and my ex or whatever. I mean, like, there's no bad blood or anything. We just realized we're better off as friends. But it's just like, throughout the relationship, for me, it was my first relationship. So it was just like, oh, like, this is normal. This is fine. But as I started going through like therapy and talking to other people, and it's just like, oh, maybe this isn't. I mean, I won't go into specifically, but it's just like there's some things that went on and that happened that I'm just like, wow, no, I don't like any of this. And it's just like, and then you have the ability to be able to be like, fine, like, I don't have to stay in this relationship. I could leave. And it's just like, as soon as you realize that, you realize you have a lot of power. And it's just like, so once you realize that you're with someone who probably isn't going to be good for your mental health, and if you bring up something to them, they might think like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal, so just get over it. And it's just like, if that's not what you need from your partner and you're not receiving that, it's probably time to go off and look for somebody else. I mean, so that's, not to go too much into detail, but it's just like, I'm also grateful for the fact that I went through all that and we went through all that. And it's just like, right now, we're co-parents still. We still rely on each other to watch the kids and stuff. And we even still go out and do things with the kids together, just because, for the kids, it's not their fault they're not together. So it's just like, so why take that, that unity away from them? But it's just like, now I know, okay, for my next relationship, like, my needs are X, Y, and Z. If I'm with someone, or I'm talking to somebody who doesn't meet those needs, on to the next, because it's like, you already know, you've been down that path before, and it's just like, where it's going to end. So it's just like, you don't want to get back into that cycle. So I think, especially with relationships, like, I think there's a lot of stigma too with kids. If you have kids, like, the whole our society is like, well, you have to get married, stay together for the kids. And it's just like, that could be more damaging than more people think, because just like
at what cost?
Right. If you don't mesh with that person, they're not the right person for you. All it's going to be is that it's a clash. You're just gonna go back and forth and argue all the time, and it's just like this is not gonna work. But it's just like, oh well, society says we have to stay together, so this is what we're gonna do, and then you just end up living a miserable life. I mean, so it's just like
that happens to so many people. It's so unfortunate. I think for me, and really looking back to how my past relationships have gone, it's, well, for one, I think, why did I get into that relationship? And unfortunately, it's because as a society, we have a very superficial understanding of what it takes to get into a relationship. It's not like physical attraction, number one, that's what people prioritize. They look at somebody and like, wow, that person looks amazing, or that person is beautiful. And they're like, yep, we could fit together. We can be in a relationship together. And, at least for me, in my own past experiences, I've gone into relationships without truly understanding somebody, without truly getting to know somebody, to then even decide, can I even be with this person? And it's like, and sometimes you get so caught up in the lust of the moment and the emotions of, oh, like I'm getting to know somebody, and like, oh, they maybe I might date them, that honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
And so we don't prioritize getting to know somebody. We don't prioritize having that very deep understanding of another person to even know, like, can I and this person work together? And I think it's kind of, when you hear about this, oh, like, you never know if you can last with someone until you live with them. Well, because in a home, at times you're in your most comfortable space. And so you kind of let yourself be yourself, and you really, you're vulnerable, and you really start to see who somebody really is in their true colors or whatever. But it's like, is that really on them? To an extent, if they're doing bad things or doing things that are just hurtful or harmful to other people, then I hope that individual is able to correct those ways, to be better, and acknowledge that the things that they are doing aren't good for anybody. It's not good for them, but what I'm really trying to say here, it's get to know somebody first, like really get to know somebody. And obviously, have your fun, go on dates and different stuff like that. And don't be afraid to, dabble into the relationship with somebody. But if you jump into any sort of relationship without really understanding who somebody is, I mean, it's just in a matter of time of when those things are going to come out, and you guys will begin to clash. And then it's like, well, you kind of start pointing fingers. It's like, well, no, it's you. It's your fault. You're the person that's doing this. And it's like, well, maybe you just didn't maybe take the opportunity to get to know somebody and figure out, do our personalities work together? And I think that's a really important thing. And that's something that I want to learn more about, moving into, like, I've been single for a while now. And so I've been thinking about, where do I go from here? Do I, like, look for a potential partner? Do I just kind of continue to focus on myself? But I have these reservations and these fears because of how my past relationships have gone and the traumas that I have experienced in those relationships. And it's like, okay, well, how do I go about it in the best way? And I think for me, it's get to know somebody.
Yeah, I think on top of that too is you have to know who you are as a person. You have to get to know yourself. So for me, I mean, I've been single for a while as well, and it's just like I'm afraid to get into a relationship, or just to, just to even, I mean, just the thought of like talking to somebody new, I'm like, ooh. But it's just like, you have to take the opportunity to step back and be like, okay, who am I? What do I need in a relationship? And I think as soon as you get those two things down, especially your needs, if your needs aren't being met, then within the first whatever, you could just be like, okay, well, my needs aren't being met. This isn't going to work. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're going to go our separate ways. But it's just like, if you don't get to know yourself first, like for me, I kind of, we kind of just jumped into the relationship. Like we met in college, we had classes together, and, we're both funny, whatever. So it was cool. It was a cool friendship. And then, we just kind of, I think, looking back on it, we kind of just jumped into it. And it's just like, there wasn't any boundaries set. There wasn't any kind. It was just like, oh, this is fun, and honeymoon phase, and it's just like, for me, it's my first ever relationship. So I was like, this is dope. I love this. This is awesome. I have somebody. I finally have somebody, because I've never been with anybody before, and it's just like, but then down the line, you move in together. You see different things. They have traumas they're going through. You have traumas that you're going through. Ultimately, we were just young, and it was just it just didn't work. But it's just like, you have to be able to know, okay, this is what's happened to me in the past. This is what I need to look for. These are signals I need to look for. These are red flags I need to look for. And it's just like, if you don't know yourself, or you don't know what your needs are, you're probably not in the best position to jump into a relationship with anybody. And that's how you get to know who you are, and you learn to love yourself. You have your faults, you have your traumas, you have your whatever. And it's just like, if you don't appreciate those things and get to know those things, it's not gonna get any easier when you're with someone. You should expect them, like, oh, you should just know how I feel, or how I'm thinking, or whatever. And I think, I think a lot of people are in relationships with people that don't mess with them mentally. And it's just like, that's just how society is, I guess.
And it kind of cracks me up just thinking about this, but you kind of have to walk into a relationship with the mindset of, this is a business deal. And you have to, from the very beginning, I don't think very many people do this. So when they get too far into it, they can't have these types of conversations. But within any relationship that you are even thinking about going into, it's establish your expectations and your boundaries. And even if you need to, like, set a timeline for things, just be like, hey, like, I want to take things slow, and this is why. And if we figure out that, hey, we're just not going to mesh, then we need to have that conversation and be able to come to the understanding of, like, hey, we need to call it quits. And I think it's a hard conversation to have. No one ever wants to have that, especially like, oh, yeah, I'm really liking this person, that things are great for me. And then for them to be like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work.
That's the thing too. It's a really hard conversation you have to have. And it's just like, and I think that was another thing for us too. Like, nobody wanted to have that or start that conversation. So we're just like, it'll get better. It'll get better. But it's just like, I find, just not with myself, but like talking to other friends and having relationships, like, the more you say, oh, it'll get better, it's probably not going to get better. So it's like, you kind of have to have that heart to heart with yourself first and be like, okay, is this really somebody I can see myself with or see a future with? Like, because, with them, they've said this in the past, they've done this in the past, and this is how they are. So it's just like, can I see myself with them? And you have to ask yourself that. And if you can't see yourself with them, maybe it's time to move on and look for, not even just jump into another relationship. It's just like, okay, that didn't work out. That's fine. You'll find somebody else eventually. I mean, because me personally, I think things work out the way they're supposed to. So whether it's God or the universe, whatever, I'm just like, this wasn't meant to be, so it wasn't. So now it's just like, okay, I'm just waiting for the next opportunity for whoever to walk into my life. And it's just like, now, with kids, it's a little bit different. It's because it's just like, oh, is this person going to be, nice to my kids, or my kids going to like them, or they going to like my kids? And it's just like, it's a big thing. So it's just like, so that's another reason why I'm like, okay.
All these need like checks and balances.
Yeah, exactly. Through. So I'm a little more cautious, but it's just like, but the main thing is, you have to make sure that if you're in a relationship now, you have to make sure that this person meets your needs, your mental, they're not responsible to make you happy. I think that's what I learned in my last relationship. Like, it's not your partner's responsibility to make you happy, but at the same time, it's just like, if they kind of if they not make you happy, but it's, I'm not trying to say, it's just like, if you're with someone that you feel comfortable with and you're happy with, it's just like, you're happy because your needs are being met, and they know what those needs are. They know what your boundaries are and your expectations, and theirs, and it just works. And that's the type of relationship everyone should be looking for. But it's just like, I'm not a dating expert. I'm not here to tell you, oh, go break up with your girlfriend. But it's just like, you know, you have to check in on your mental health, not only just, you know, just for yourself, but if you're in a relationship, you need to make sure that it's going the way that you want it to go, or not going the way that you want it to go, but it's going in a positive direction.
You have to really, you know, in moments like this and this sort of thought process, it's prioritize yourself
For sure.
You know, and like, you know, that's easier said than done, but you have to be able to like do weekly checks or monthly checks of like, how's my mental health? How am I in this situation right now? How are, you know, things going in the relationship? Are they moving in the direction that I want them to go? And, you know, I think you brought up a really important thing. It's, you know, your partner should never be your source of happiness. You know, they're your partner because you know, there's two individuals that come together, that work well together, that enjoy each other's time and company, and want to maybe have a family together, or just want to spend time with each other and just enjoy that. But if you don't establish your own source of happiness for you, because of you, I mean, you're going to put all of that onto the relationship. And so when it comes to having those conversations or having the realization of like, hey, this is not working out, or this relationship isn't how it should be, or I'm not being treated how I should be, a lot of that comes back to like, well, they make me happy. Well, it's like, do they?
Yeah.
Do they really? Like, yeah. And so, and, you know, maybe any sort of mental health professional or anybody that might have, you know, more knowledge on this, it's why do we always try to reason with a hard situation, you know, and what sort of fear-based thoughts are we having, and why do we have those? You know,
I think a lot of it is because nobody wants to be alone. Who wants to go to bed by themselves? I mean, it's like at first, it's cool. I'm like, I got space and I can stretch out or whatever. But it's just like at the end of the day, I'm just like, I want cuddles too.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just like,
what about me?
Yeah, but when you're in that relationship with someone who may not be a good fit for you, you don't want to embrace the reality of like, this could end.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, that means I'll be by myself, and that means I'll be alone again. And I think a lot of people go through that, and they're just like, oh, well, it'll get better. And it's just like, if it was going to get better, it would have happened already. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, a lot of times, you know, you have to really know who you are first, and to know that you're ready. Okay. You know, because not everyone you go on a date with it's not going to be a home run. Like, okay, great. First date went great. We're going to get married next month. I mean, because it just doesn't work like that. And it's just like, as long as you know your triggers, your healing, and a lot of things too. I think a lot of people jump into relationships before they fully heal from their last relationship in regards to trauma, especially if they were like with an abusive person mentally or physically. I think some people just like, oh, well, you know, I'll be fine. And it's just like all that comes out because a lot of times you kind of take out those frustrations and those like that trauma on your partner, and they have no idea where it's coming from. You're just like, oh, you know, and at the end of it, that it comes up, oh yeah, you just reminded me of what my partner, my ex used to do or whatever. And it's just like, that's not cool, because then you just lash out and you just assume there's going to end up like the other person. Then you kind of close yourself off. And it's just like, you know, you have to heal from that. I mean, again, we're not professionals or anything, but if there are any like, you know, experts or not, I mean, I don't think there is a dating expert, but it's just like, if there's anybody that has any more insight on this in regards to, you know, how to go about getting into a relationship or what checks and balances should you be checking in on, let us know, because I personally would like to know more about that. I mean, but it's just like, you know, I think this podcast, you know, we're not professionals, but we're just here to share our thoughts and kind of get that conversation going. But I think, you know, it's not really talked about in relationships, you know, that you have to be that your happiness is not going to stem from somebody else, and it's just like you have to you have to know who you are, you have to know what your traumas and triggers and all that stuff is, and it's just like, and then you're probably going to be in a better spot if you compared to someone who doesn't know those things.
Yeah.
So that's,
and I think what you were saying too. It's like you do have to maybe not fully heal, but I mean,
it'll help
heal a lot, from your past relationships, because I mean, just think about, you might be putting some extra pressure on someone. Like I think another thing that we need to acknowledge too is being in a relationship is hard.
It's work.
And yeah, it's work, and it's a lot that goes into it and a lot that goes into maintaining it. But obviously as it progresses and as you grow with your person or whatever, it gets a little bit easier to maintain and work, because you essentially just really get to know that person and know, okay, I know how to check in on my partner. We have that communication, we have that transparency, and that's ultimately where it should go. But, if you get into a relationship without fully healing, what trauma are you bringing from that relationship and then placing on somebody else? Because, I mean, I could just think of so many just different times in my own relationships where it's like, you don't want to be compared to that person's ex, or have that person think the same of you or have that same expectation, because then it's like, well, now I'm maybe sort of walking on eggshells. It's what can and can't I do that may or may not be a trigger for my partner, and it's unfair to put that on anybody else in any relationship or anything that you really get into with another individual. You should never put the weight of your trauma on somebody else. That is yours to deal with it, and you got to take accountability for it, and it's a process and it's hard, but it's something you have to do and you have to take action on.
Right. And I think a lot of that too is that if you bring that trauma unchecked, all you're going to do is cause this other person to experience that same trauma. And then if you break up, whatever, that person's going to be traumatized too.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a never ending cycle, because it's just that trauma is just going to build and kind of snowball onto a whole bunch of people. And then now everyone's traumatized. I mean, so it's just like you have to realize, I'm triggered by this. My ex used to do this. I don't want this to happen. I know, I know what to look for. I know, what makes me upset. I know, and another thing too is you have to learn how to communicate with that person. So it's just like, if they are doing something that maybe, to them it's not a big deal, but you're like, hey, this makes me feel a certain way. And I think that that's a lot of it too. No one wants to have those conversations because, they might take it the wrong way, or they might get defensive. Or they know that their partner's going to get defensive. So if that's the case,
even worse.
That's a red flag in itself. I mean, so I think society wise, I think a lot of it is just like, it gets better, so just stick with it, stick it out. And it's just like, no, you don't have to do that, especially with people who have kids, with someone who they don't see themselves with. It's just like, you don't have to stay with that person, but society says you do, kind of. So it's just like, now it's 2021, things are changing a little bit. So it's just like, hopefully I would like this to be more of a regular conversation into the mainstream. It's just like, I know there's magazines like, oh, like, is your partner really the one or whatever? And it's just like, a lot of that is just for you to buy it. But it's just like, you really have to know who you are before you get into a relationship. And it's just like, you're going to have traumas. Are you healed enough to be able to, not only just like not let anything trigger you, because that's kind of impossible, but it's just like, you have to be open about those traumas too. But hey, this happened and this happened and this happened. So there it is. You kind of have to communicate that, just let it all out or whatever. So it's just like, but not everybody does that.
Yeah. I think it's just have this conversation with yourself too, like how could you, if you have these triggers or have these things that, you know, get you upset or bother you, how could you expect someone to not do those things or to not know about those things if you don't effectively communicate them? Well, it's like, you know, it's, I mean, okay, this is probably a bad example. You have your significant other, you guys are living together, they didn't wash their dishes, and their dishes are just sitting on the counter, and for you, that's a trigger. But you get mad about those dishes being left out because it's a trigger for you, and then blow up on your significant other for leaving the dishes out when it's like, okay, maybe leaving the dishes out isn't that big of a deal. They were going to wash it later, or hey, they just forgot about it. They got busy. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of blow up the situation a little bit more because there was that lack of communication. There was that lack of understanding of like, hey, I don't like when this happens. Please don't do it. Or just have an awareness of it, you know? Like it ultimately comes down to having that awareness of, one, for you, what your triggers are. And then I think for somebody else on the other end, what are some things that you might be doing now that might be triggers for other people? And it's about that self-reflection, getting to know yourself, who you are as a person, what you do, and how your actions, the way you talk, your beliefs might affect other people. And I don't think that's part of the conversation as much either. Unfortunately, people are sometimes only, willing to take accountability in some aspects of their life and not really in every space where it's like, I equally affect the people around me just like they equally affect me. And if we are not on the same level, if we are not, communicating effectively, transparent with one another, and have the same level of understanding with things, yeah, some shit's gonna happen,
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is accountability is kind of it seems like it's a thing in the past now.
Yeah,
because nobody wants to say it's their fault, which I understand. Like it's hard to be like, yep, I fucked up, that was my fault. But it's just like, for me, I think now it's a little bit easier for me to be like, oh yeah, my bad, I did that, that's my fault. But it's just like, that isn't part of the normal conversation. I think nobody wants to be held accountable because society now says like, oh, don't discipline your kids or don't discipline your kids a certain way or whatever. So there's no accountability starting off, kids, and they get older and they're not held accountable for anything.
No.
So it's just like, all that's going to do is just cause, what's it called?
The snowball effect.
Yeah. And it's just like, and it's not just relationships, it's accountability with everything.
Yeah.
Your job, your family, your whatever.
Finances.
And it's like you have to hold yourself accountable, and a lot of people don't. And it's just like, especially when you're in a relationship with somebody, it's kind of like an agreement. Mm-hmm. Like you need to hold yourself accountable for things that go on in a relationship. Like for me, after we broke up and I reflected on everything, there's a lot of things that I could have done better.
Yeah.
And I brought that up and apologized, whatever. And it's just like, that's what you need to do. You need like, what part of this was my fault? Because
it's kind of own up to your shit.
Yeah. Because most of the time it's not just a one-way street. Like, oh, we just ended because, they weren't meeting my needs. Maybe you weren't meeting theirs either. Mm-hmm. I mean, so so it's just like, you have to hold yourself accountable for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think just, you bring up a really, really good point is, don't hold yourself on too high of a pedestal,
Right.
Like you have to really be accountable for yourself and how you affect other people, and just to be able to reflect and be like, to acknowledge like, hey, I could have done better. Like I could have done this better, and then to move forward and then apologize about it. Like you probably don't know how much that man, or, that you acknowledging that and apologizing could be huge for her, and and so it's tough. It's tough. I mean, I know plenty of people that don't like to admit when they're wrong, and hey, there's nothing wrong about being wrong.
No,
it's like
isn't.
You gotta just learn from it and learn, okay, well, how could I be better next time?
Right.
Or what's maybe a different way for me to think about this situation that might be a little bit better,
Right.
But I think another thing too, it's for those that maybe have not had to be held accountable or have not had that sort of discipline, and then to be older now and to maybe they have kids or whatever, how do you hold your kid accountable or hold yourself accountable when you've gone for so much of your life without knowing how, And I think that's another thing too. It's, don't be afraid to learn. Like, go out and learn how, go work on yourself, go talk to a therapist, go talk to a professional, whatever you need to do to learn to be better. Because a lot of us, it's like, well, I was never held accountable when I was young, and now I have a kid or I have a family or I'm in the situation where I got to hold somebody else accountable, but I don't know how to do it. And it's, one, acknowledge it and then figure out how. You learn how. And I think there's a lot of people, and I think you can apply this to really any situation. When you learn a behavior from a very young age, it's hard to change that thought process around it, to change that behavior around it, because I've known this for all my life. How could I possibly be wrong, or how could it possibly be different? This is the way I've always done it.
You have to go about it like you have to unlearn things.
Yeah.
You have to. I mean, and I think that the opportunity to understand that you need to unlearn things, a lot of that comes through therapy and talking to people and talking to different people from different walks of life. And maybe your parent who didn't hold you accountable probably isn't going to be the best person to talk to. But it's just like, but I think accountability is just, I think it's a big issue right now. And I think a lot of people don't take accountability for their actions or don't want to. And it's just like, you have to, just do it. Take the accountability for it. And a lot of people don't have the capacity to either. So, so it's just like, I honestly don't know how to get someone to, to hold themselves accountable or anything, but it's just like, I think it is something that needs to be talked about more and needs to be instilled more as accountability. And it's like, for me, with my parents, that was like a big thing growing up too. It's just like, if you did something wrong, you gotta say something. You can't just be like, oh, well, this is going to blow over. And it's just like, you have to hold yourself accountable. And I remember I used to, when I was playing football in high school, I used to blame my coaches. Oh, they're not putting me in because they don't like me or whatever. Yeah. And it's just like, throughout high school, that's kind of how I was, especially when it came to football. But as I got older, going to therapy, it's like, man, I could have done better. And I didn't. And that was the reason why, I didn't play as much. So it's just like now it's okay. I can hold myself accountable for that. And then, so now, especially, so if that goes into holding yourself accountable for that. And for me personally, holding myself accountable for, the failed relationship too. It's just like, I had a part in that too. So it's just like, it's hard. That wasn't hard to come by. I was just like, it wasn't my fault, not me. But it's just like, but it's like, oh yeah, it was me too. So,
and I think the thing is too, you're gonna have your failed relationships, you're gonna have your mishaps and your poor moments, but it's because you need to.
Oh yeah,
you need to, so you can get to a better place. And that kind of goes back to just taking in the negative with the positive. As much as we would like our lives to be perfect and to do everything right the first time, like, go out and don't be afraid to fail. Yeah. Like, just go out, experience life, always try to be your best self and try to be a good person, and take every opportunity you can to learn and to grow and to develop better habits. But I think too, be open to failing, be okay with the idea to fail, and just, take every opportunity that you can to just be better, and to, I don't know, life is a process, and it's full of, it's mountains and valleys. And if you really just don't take the opportunity there to grow and to be better and to do better as for yourself, it's life can be hard, and it can be a continuous challenge for you. but you have to be able to take action, to be able to take those steps to move forward, to be better, to learn about yourself. And I mean, just the accountability aspect in itself is huge.
I think accountability is a big part of your mental health, because if you don't take, especially if you have somebody who's constantly telling you like, hey, you're making me feel this way, you're like, no, I'm not. And it's just like, you have to take the accountability for that. You have to be like, okay, like, yeah, because nobody wants to admit that they're wrong. Yeah. I mean, I could probably guarantee that 99% of the population does not want to admit that they're wrong. But it's like, at the end of the day, you kind of have to sometimes, because it's just like, you know, if you don't admit that you're wrong and you don't take the accountability, you're not going to grow. You're just going to be that same person. And it's just like, if you have, you know, if you don't take the opportunity to grow, all you're going to do is cause trauma and hell for everyone else that's going to be in your life. And it's just like, and then it's going to come to a point to where ain't no one's going to want to be around you.
Yeah.
Because all you do is bring negativity and stress and trauma, and, you know, you shame people or whatever it is that you do. It's just like, you have to sit back and think about, what can I take accountability for? So if you have a failed relationship, a failed marriage, even with my kids, my own kids, I'm just like, damn, I fail every day. I'm not the best parent. I'm not going to say that I am. Yeah. But it's just like, but I could take the accountability for that, and I could take, and the next step after that is, okay, well, how can I learn from this, and how can I do better? Because, you know, for me, I think for any parent, for every parent, it's a big responsibility to have kids, because like they didn't ask to be born. It's not their fault. No. But it's just like, but if you don't take accountability or if you don't take accountability for your failures, if you don't take the accountability for, your wrongdoings or whatever, it's just like, all that's going to do is cause them to not take accountability, them to be traumatized because you don't know how to express your feelings, or you don't know how to talk to a person civilly without, you know, trying to cut the jugular. But it's just like, they're not going to learn coping mechanisms. They're not going to learn how to communicate. And it's just going to be a whole shit show, because you yourself didn't take the opportunity to, you know, hold yourself accountable. So that's kind of my big thing with the accountability. It's just like, you have to hold yourself accountable. Yeah, you have to know what your wrongdoings are. Yeah, you have to be able to admit, like, yeah, I made a mistake. This is what it was. I'm sorry. Apologize for it. And then you can move on. And then especially if you affected somebody else, as soon as you take that accountability and you admit it to them, then you could both heal. Yeah. And then it just gets snowball to more people, whatever. It just gets better from there. So it's just like, if you don't take that accountability, kind of be a menace to society. Yeah.
But I mean, overall, it's a hard process, and I think just take it for what it is. You know, take, you know, every opportunity that you can to get better. You know, take that accountability, and just continue to move forward. You know, things can get hard at times, but that's all right. You know, I mean, if you've ever gone through something in your life, and you thought, man, this is it, take a moment to think about that and be like, well, I made it through it. I'm here now. I've grown. And I'm better.
Yeah, I think a good thing, you know, say you're in a situation right now, you're in a relationship with somebody, or you have, you know, your kids or whatever, and you can't admit to them yet that you did something wrong, but you know you have to take accountability. Send us a message. Put it in the message. Just like, at least you get it out there. Yeah. To a point to where you're like, you're aware. So if you're aware of it, you can if you're aware from it, you can acknowledge it, and then you can take the responsibility for it, and that's when the healing starts. Is as soon as you're able to, you know, I made the mistake of, you know, calling my kids names, or I made the mistake of like calling my significant other, you know, names, or saying that, you know, their feelings didn't matter, or didn't listen to them, or whatever. As soon as you could take the responsibility for that, you know, I think one, it's going to be a huge weight off your shoulders. And two, it's just going to allow you to be able to grow as a human. And once you get into more relationships, you're able to know that, yeah, I've grown. I'm a better person now. Now I know how to handle, when these situations come up, I know how to handle them better. I know how to communicate better. And it's just, overall, this just gets better for everybody.
But I'm really glad that we had this conversation, and it was a conversation that I didn't know I needed to have, just as a reminder of like, take accountability, acknowledge, take action, and just grow, just don't get too caught up in the mess of things. Life is challenging, but that doesn't mean that you can't overcome it, but you have to be able to take the steps towards, overcoming whatever you are going through. And it starts with the acknowledgement and the awareness of where you are and who you are as a person. And so, I mean, I'm glad that we had this conversation, and I hope that, somebody else out there is receiving this message well. And if you have anything to share, like Luis said, feel free to reach out to us. The main purpose of this podcast is to build that community that we engage with, other people. So if you have anything that you want to share, if you've gone through your own thing, and maybe you've learned your own awareness, you've learned your own triggers, you've learned how to be more grateful, let us know, because we would love to hear some successes that you guys have had, in your own mental health journey. And that for me would be a beautiful thing to hear on. So, with that being said, I've had a pleasure of just filming the second episode here. I think I'm looking forward to the conversations that we have in the future, and just being able to sit and reflect and learn things throughout this own process here. I feel like I've learned so much from you already in this whole process, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. But hey, we got the second episode in the books here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, with all that being said, again, not professionals, not trying to be, but it's just like, hey, I mean, if just like Carlos said, if you have anything that that you've learned yourself, you've learned your triggers, you've taken accountability for things, or you would like to take accountability for things, let us know. Send us a DM, send us a comment, whatever. We want to get the conversation going. That's the whole point of this podcast, is to get the conversation going and grow the community. And hopefully this kind of gets out into the mainstream and it's talked about more. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're still listening, trooper.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
My troopers out there.
Thank you again for sure. I can't wait for, our next episode. And I'm looking forward to getting a good schedule down so we can have, possibly weekly or bi-weekly or whatever. We're going to figure all that out soon, but stay tuned. We have a lot of other topics that we want to be able to get to, and if you have anything that you want to hear or anything that you want us to touch on, hit us up.
Yeah, let us know. And I've definitely talked to a few people already, and they're like, oh, you should maybe talk about this, or I'd love to hear more about this. So we listen. We are taking those into acknowledgement, and we do want to talk a little bit more about what you guys want to hear about. We're not professionals, but we're just engaging in this conversation.
For sure.
And that's what we are trying to encourage too. If you can't have the conversation with somebody else around you, have it with us or whatever. But it was a pleasure. I've had such a fun time here, and I look forward to our second episode.
For sure, yeah. And just follow, share this with anybody you can share it with. Put it on your Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. I've done all that already, but it's I'm excited to see what's going to happen next. Thank you for sticking around for episode 2, and I'm stoked for episode 3.
All right, y'all. Take care.